My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sankaran, Guru Piran Nyo, fellow Jnanis. I'm going to continue with Mahan's meditation technique and some of the benefits of meditation. And you will see that I've posted and written extensively over the last few weeks on how meditation helps us in many facets of our lives. And today I will continue and tell you, just to summarize, Mahan's meditation technique has three parts, three stages, and each one of the stages has got important, impact on us, both on our brain, our body, our mind, our intellect, and our personality. So, as I mentioned, first stage is very important to help us focus, and in that focus helps us parts of our brains to grow, the gray matter, and it helps us with our intellectual growth. The second stage helps us with improving our health and well-being, overall body's health, and also the overall well-being, feeling much more better, confident, a sense of, kind of, refresh, and we, the body tends to get tired, especially as we work and, as we age. But this meditation, helps, strengthen our body and also rejuvenate our body. And of course, the third stage is very important, which helps us to, the guru shows how to cleanse our mind from all the negative qualities that we have. I call it the 18 asuric qualities. And when that slowly disappears, the divine qualities emerge. Our mind becomes more blissful. We feel more connected to the divine force that is powering us. And, that helps us in a whole range of things. So this meditation helps, in many facets. And I think the most important thing is actually I spoke about how the meditation gives us that spiritual connectedness, and that kind of shapes every facet of our lives. And I showed how in the last few satsangs, how that spiritual connectedness helps, improve our body health, our bodily health, and, our brain, our emotional and mental state becomes, more stronger. We become more aware of the forces in us, the sense of clarity of thought that we have. We're not confused. We know how to unpack the complexity of life. And we also are able to focus and concentrate. And that focus and concentration helps us with our intellectual growth and capabilities. And that helps us to, introspect, contemplate, reflect, and, go deeper to touch more subtle aspects of things around us and things within us. And something very interesting happens is that as our intellect grows and explores and discovers, we discover the creativity, the creator's creative force in us. And you see, sometimes you get the eureka moments of discovery. And this is something that, if you are intensively, reading, reflecting, you see that you understand things better, and eventually you see that you start discovering things that you before would have missed. You also discover that natural talent in you. There is an innate talent that is embedded in all of us. And, whether it's cooking or poetry or music or, writing a book or speaking, we're able to unlock that natural talent in us. Something also very interesting happens is that, emotional intelligence, now we have a lot more tools to operate in this material world, relate to different things, different people better. Our emotional intelligence is enhanced. We're able to build social capital, build relationships in our homes, in our office place, in our professional life, and in our community life. And this will be very useful for us to form good social networks and social bondings that will help us enrich us. And of course, we become more, we're able to tap and learn from multiple channels, and eventually we become self-sufficient, and we know how to learn, relearn, unlearn, and eventually, acquire the knowledge, treasure, and the wisdom to chart our own destiny. And we also see that, as we become more empowered, as we practice this, certain leadership qualities starts emerging in us. We don't, depend on others, but we start leading our own way of life. And I spoke about the kind of wow mindset we get, and the kind of seven core values of a successful spiritual person that divinize every facet of their lives. So the leadership qualities starts emerging, and slowly, you see that you start taking on leadership roles, whether in your home or in your professional life or in the community life. You play a bigger role than, in a more profound way than just in your own narrow circles of networks. Today I want to spend some time that, I often hear from people that, when we take the spiritual part, is material wealth very important? Many scriptures and many people and many saints say, oh no, you have to give up all your desires and all those things. That's not what Mahan and great saints have advocated. You'll see in our own scriptures, it said that enlightened way of life is actually about pursuing the four stages of practice, which is dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Dharma is knowledge that makes our mind strong, powerful, resilient. Artha is to be able to unlock the wealth that is, in us and around us. It starts with our spiritual wealth, right up to all the wealth that I've been speaking about, including leadership. And I'm going to speak about the economic wealth. And so the artha is very important. Karma is desires and aspirations and goals in our lives. How do we fulfill them in a divine way? And when we achieve those three, dharma, artha, kama, one attains an enlightened life. So I want to speak about what is this economic well-being that Mahan and other great saints have been speaking about. And I myself, in some stages in my life, as I was practicing this, I had this question: should I pursue a professional life, or should I take a more spiritual and step back from, my own studies in university, and engage in more kind of a quiet life, perhaps maybe a more kind of a recluse life. I saw some of my own friends who took this path, and two of them became a monk and gave up their studies. So I myself was debating this, but fortunately, I've been practicing Mahan's teachings, reading it. He says, no, you can still be spiritual and still undertake all your duties. And I got inspiration from many scriptures and masters to do that. So how do we divinize this, economic well-being? And this is where that, as I deepen the knowledge, Mahan has a chapter on economics, and that led me to the great scriptures of many great saints that talk about this dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So what is this? Why is this economic well-being very important for our spiritual journey? And I want to walk through with you this, because from time to time I hear young youth that take on the spiritual path ask me this question: Guru, should I give up everything and just focus on, being a monk, or being somebody who just focus on spirituality? And I always tell them that, as human beings, we have to be self-sufficient. We have to learn to look after ourselves. That includes our own material needs and that of our family if they are dependent on you. Right. So how do we divinize that aspect of our lives, right? Close to 30, 40, 50 years of our lives, we have to devote time to acquire the material resources to support our living and that of our family. That also is divine. I'll come back with some examples. So how does one divinize that our material existence? Why is it very important? And here I talk about financial security, acquisition of material wealth, and quality of life. So, what do we mean by economic well-being? There are several facets of it, and this is my own experience of practicing Mahan's teachings for more than 45 years, 40 to 45 years. And why economic well-being is also related to our spiritual well-being and vice versa. What is economic well-being? So we are all, while we have a spiritual realm, we also have a material realm. And that material realm requires energy, requires resources to sustain this material body. Of course, nature has given us some natural things like sunlight, and a whole full air and a whole host of things. But nature also requires us to put in the effort to acquire food and other resources to make our lives, better. So there is an effort that we need to put to acquire these resources to sustain ourselves and our families. And that is why this is part of nature. And nature is divine. So if we choose not to partake in this activity, then our existence will be limited or the quality of our existence will be compromised. And this is the reality of this material world. So if we don't acquire good, nutritious food, it affects the health of the body. If we don't acquire a place where we can live with clean water, clean air, it affects our body and that of our next generation. So all this requires resources, which means that we have to look after our body, our mind, the interactions that we have. All this requires us to put in some effort to acquire these material resources to keep this material body and the mind that is functioning in this material body. So this notion of economic well-being is actually a human activity to harness the resources nature has given us, manage the resources nature has given us, utilize the resources nature has given us to improve our quality of life so that we can live an enlightened life. So remember, economic well-being is a human activity to sustain human living and human living conditions. And that is really important for the future generation of human existence. So it's part and parcel of that divine, DNA. Of course, many animals have different ways of looking after themselves. They don't have sophisticated economic, systems to help them. But we human beings have evolved to create economic systems to provide us that resources to sustain our lives. Given that we have evolved over many thousands of years to build this system to look after us and the next generation, we have to learn to understand these economic systems very well so that we are able to utilize the system to harness that resources nature has made or blessed us with. So what is this? Why the economics is very important? How do we see it with a divine lens? And this is where I think uh, most people, sometimes take it for granted. So when we take a spiritual perspective of accumulation of wealth, this is the artha part, we have to acquire the Dharma. The Dharma means that spiritual, sustainable knowledge that how we harness other resources of nature, utilize it, and create value from it. So, material wealth is a very important wealth to sustain our material life. So, what is economic well-being? One of the most important thing as a species is that we have developed financial systems, and financial security is very important for spiritual journey. Right? When you have financial insecurities or financial difficulties, it is hard for people to sit down and meditate or concentrate or focus on a spiritual journey. So I always tell young people that take on the spiritual journey, you know, make sure that you have the skill sets to create job for yourself, employment, and a sustained income stream so that you are able to look after yourself and the people that are dependent on you. So financial security is critical for ensuring, you know, our material body and our material being is able to sustain in this material world. So everything that I spoke about, spiritual capital, intellectual capital, all that should help us build that material capital so that we are not dependent on others. So we need to be able to acquire the knowledge, the skill sets, the social interactions, the way we relate to people. All this contributes to our economic well-being. If we continuously fight with people, if we continuously be difficult, you see that it's very difficult to form relationship that value add to our own economic circumstances. So financial security is an integral part of spiritual development, right? Which means that we have to manage our financial resources, our material resources very well. We don't blow it away in frivolous things, things that harm us, damage our body, or harm our relationships. So utilizing these resources in a divine way is actually spiritual. What does that mean? We sustain our way of life, ensuring we have a home, we have adequate food, and a whole host of things that keep us healthy, keep our mind and our brain healthy, our mind healthy, and help us to acquire the knowledge and the education and the rest time for us to be able to function very well. So this resources is very important. So, I run this program where I want to show how spiritual growth is also integral to financial development and vice versa. You see, the most difficult thing that even people who are on the spiritual journey, when they are financially very difficult, it is very difficult for them to meditate or do anything else. Of course, from time to time, we have emergencies and we need to save. And I always tell young people that when you're working, you always should have a savings. And if you did it right within the age of 55 to 60 years old, you'd have enough money to retire. That's also part of the spiritual journey I'll speak about. So we need to be able to have that financial security, particularly people who are the youth, acquiring the knowledge, all the capitals, but saving money and don't blow your money on frivolous things. The second thing is that financial security is very important. We also need to be able to have adequate income and assets, material assets. Not overly, these assets are very important because it translates into savings, for our own and our children's education. Because in this material world, nothing is cheap, right? So education, buying a book, you have to pay for this. Even if you go to spiritual organizations where great saints and sages have written a book, if you want to acquire the book, you still have to pay for it, right? So no spiritual organization will give it to you for free. Like nature gives sunlight, we can do photosynthesis and other things easily. But we see in this material world everything there is a cost. And we want to be able to acquire the resources. We have to be self-sufficient to be able to acquire those important, essential uh, things in life for our functioning and that of our family. So savings is very important. I always tell young people, at least save about 10 to 20% of your gross income every month. The other important asset is also acquiring a home. This is also part of the spiritual journey where acquisition of home gives you a fixed address. And I remember Mahan, the moment he was taking the spiritual journey, he realized that he needed to get a fixed asset so that there's a headquarters and an anchor. And this is something that the young people don't think about. The moment they get a job, they buy cars and all those things, not realizing that these assets will depreciate. So it's very important to acquire a place so that and that asset tends to appreciate unlike most of the asset. And this is what Mahan did the moment he took the spiritual journey, he acquired this property and today it's the headquarters of Mahan Sabha. In the same way, I always encourage that those who are on the spiritual journey make sure that we put in enough resources to at least acquire the house in 25 to 30 years. This is very important as part of the spiritual journey to have a place that you have that you can sit and do your meditation and do all your service. The other aspect is passive income. Many of us will have to retire at some point, and if we want to still continue that lifestyle of being able to do charity, being able to meditate, but still be able to be self-sufficient, we need to start investing at a very early age on assets that will give us passive income, right? So this is something that I learned from my gurus that, while you're at the youth level, save, acquire assets. You don't have to buy big bungalows and have adequate, but make sure that you have streams of income until you leave this material world. After that, you can pass it on to your whoever the beneficiaries are. This is also part of planning our spiritual journey. The third aspect is actually access to opportunities. All the resources, the financial resources, the income, the assets unlocks opportunity for us to acquire education and professional development. As I said, acquiring books, acquiring knowledge, it requires resources. So, the only place that you don't have to pay is our Sabha. Everything is given for free. But most other places you have to pay for everything. But we have to learn. So we have to acquire, these resources to open up opportunities for our own education and professional development. You have to continuously learn. You have to continuously introspect, and that requires sometimes resources. I mean, I am in my, early 60s. I still spend a lot of resources to learn, to go to places, learn from other people. You never stop learning, right? And that's something that, I learned from my own gurus, right? Opportunity for getting a better job and career advancement. Now, if you're working in your professional life, there should always be continuous improvement so that, there is growth, intellectual, spiritual growth, and also there's a career advancement. That every career advancement you make, it helps you to secure your finances and your future, right? And the last one aspect is actually always look out for good investment opportunities, whether it's a property or whether other assets that will appreciate. A lot of young people invest in assets that are declining or depreciating. So part of spirituality is not just the asset of your spiritual growth, your intellectual growth, your emotional growth, but also your material assets should also grow with, so that at one point you can say, look, I want to stop working. I just want to do spiritual work. And you'd have, if you have that planning, you'd be able to do this, right? So this is something that You don't have to worry about future, because as we grow older, and there's no income, sometimes there's pressures to you need finances to for health or other reasons, and you don't want to be in a position where you're dependent on others. So part of the spiritual journey is to be self-sufficient. Right? I can't emphasize enough that, particularly for those who are young, you need to be able to, if you want to lead an enlightened life later on, you'll see that the economic well-being must also be critical in our stages of our lives. The other aspect is social equity and sustainability. We have to look at the social circumstances where we live. Of course, we can come from a poor place. We should have the resources to transform the place or move to places where you have good localities, where you have essential services, healthcare services, education, training, jobs, clean places, environmentally friendly places, so that you and your next generation can be prosperous, be healthy, and so on. So if you continuously, I mean, I run this, I lead this big project near my university, 2 kilometers, urban poor locality, about 26 to 27,000 people there. So my team is doing some work there. And when you go and see the conditions of living there, it is very deplorable. The hygiene is poor, the environmental conditions are poor, and the lifespan of males are somewhere between 49 to 50 years old. And they have a lot of communicable diseases and non-communicable diseases in there. Women's lifespan is also short. So we see that, sometimes they can't leave that place, and it impacts their quality of life. So the spiritual journey is, we have to have adequate resources to be able to improve our living conditions so that we get the essential services to be able to not just improve our lives and that of our family, but others. And when we do that, we are also able to contribute back to society. So we have adequate, resources to be able to support, people who are finding it very difficult. What I call last, least, and lonely. This is also a spiritual journey. If you see, great saints and sages used to build ashrams, huge ashrams, to be able to feed the poor, to be able to give the destitute a place to come and rest, to be able to give that people who are having difficulties to come and learn meditation, learn things to make their lives better. So part of the social equity is also part of the well-being, that not only you improve your own social status, but also that of others, and in a sustainable way. So I like this statement that when our quality of living improves, our quality of giving must also improve. So this is part of that economic wealth, that when we build, when we uh, help others, it also helping us in some sense. Now, all this part of economic well-being is also life satisfaction, right? I mean, one of the things you see is that the high level of satisfaction with personal finances. When our financial situation is secure, both now and the future, we have a sense of, you know, satisfaction, that we don't have to worry about whether the next bill is going to be paid or whether creditors are going to come or all those things, because these things have an impact on people's well-being. So when our personal finances are in a very good position, a sense of satisfaction and comfort is there. That also helps us to, gives us freedom of choices to make important decisions in our lives. And sometimes, we want to make certain purchases, or we want to donate some money, or we want to provide some scholarships, or we want to help the poor. We have that resources to be able to do it, right? So financial security, we have the freedom to make choices in our lives, travel somewhere, go visit, places, learn new things. And that's also part of the divine journey, the freedom to be able to do this, right? Something I learned personally, these are things that I learned personally through this Mahan's teachings, is that feeling secure about one's financial future and being optimistic about career development and prospect. This is very important because there's continuous growth in your job and your advancement that you look forward to it. You're always looking at new learnings, new discoveries, pushing the boundaries of knowledge to make a difference. And that's what really makes life really exciting. I always tell that I love school so much, I decided to stay in school forever. I don't have a job, but I have a hobby that pays me well. And that's because even though you're making money, you save the money, use what is needed for now, right? And that's part of that spiritual journey. You don't live a kind of an opulent life. You live a simple life, ஒரு ஆடம்பரமான வாழ்க்கை இல்ல, சிம்பிளான ஒரு வாழ்க்கை. So, and all these gives us peace of mind, and a whole idea of peace of mind leads to a more peaceful life. It helps us to age gracefully, and also help us fulfill all our desires, aspirations, and goals in life. For example, I want to go and visit, certain places. I say, okay, now I have the resources to do it. I can take my wife and children, and others with me. Or if you want to, provide some resources for the poor, you have that flexibility to be able to do it, right? Without, encumbering anybody else, right? So I have this wish to go to the Vatican sometime soon to see how things are, and I'm sure that within the next few years, I'm hoping that I'll be able to visit many places and discover the wonders of our world. So this is what that satisfaction is, that we have come to this earth. Let's give the best, learn as much as we can, and share as much as we can from all the wonderful resources nature's blessed us with. That's also part of the divine living. So finally, what I learned from Mahan's teachings, and many of the other great saints and sages, which is the Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, is that financial health helps us lead a fulfilled life if we channel the resources to build all the capitals of life, with spiritual capital, mental capital. So those financial resources should lead to build up of all the other capitals. As I said, starting with nurturing our spiritual wealth. You have enough financial resources to acquire books, acquire, other resources, to meet people, travel places, learn new things. Hopefully you build your own spiritual capital and all the other capitals so that you can share. So the financial and economic well-being closes the loop of our financial life. I've seen many spiritual people, are caught in financial turbulence and are unable to really focus on their spiritual journey. So Mahan and Guru Sankaran showed alternate methods on how one can still partake in life, but still do it in a divine and spiritual way. And that's what my gurus have showed me. So basically, what Mahan's teaching shows is this virtual cycle of enlightened living, where the spiritual connectedness helps us to take care of our brain and our body, our mind, our intellectual growth. Help us to build creative, discover our creativity and innovative capacity. Help us acquire the natural talent that is embedded in us, build that relationship capital, help us to become more self-sufficient and empowered, and also helps us build the leadership capital, the CEO, Chief Enlightened Officer in us, to help us chart our own destiny, and also ensure that we have that financial and economic prosperity for us to live a comfortable life, provide that comfortable life for our families, our friends, for the general public, and share some of our resources to make the lives of others, who are also struggling. Many of us became successful not on our own, We were successful because of our gurus, because of our teachers, because of our schools, because of many, many people, and including nature itself. And how do we acquire that knowledge and that prosperity and the wealth to be able to give this back to nature itself? And this is what I call a virtuous cycle of enlightened living, not continuously taking, but when we take, we harness it, we create value, and return it back. And this is what the spiritual journey is about, that I learned from these great masters. So, what do I mean by this journey? And I wrote this, in one of the mornings, that the spirit is the source of abundance and prosperity. Learn to unlock the power of the spirit to live an enlightened and a spectacular life. You know, we all are here to experience this limitedness, but we experience this limitedness with a limitless mind. And if we did that, life would be a spectacular life. And this is what this great Mahan, his teachings, and the gurus that, including Guru Piran Sivasankaran, Guru Piran Nyo, and others that showed me the path of how one can unlock the power of the spirit. And meditation helps us, the introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation, and the service mindset helps us unlock this amazing power, spiritual power that is within us. And I wish all of you all, the best to be able to discover this spirit in you. And this is the amazing miracle that I learned from this great master. Sandosham.